So if I want this other style to retain the color yellow, what I need to do is I need to group the selector again here. Come back and say container text. Can you see? So it overrides the p tag. So I'm saying that although this is a p tag, I want you to style it with the class name. So you can see that the selector is also telling us that the selector specificity is 020. This one also has its own specificity, is 011. So this has a higher specificity than this. If you don't understand specificity, we'll go through it as we go on. So that's why the second p tag inherited the color yellow. So there are several combinators. So when I mean combinators, there are several ways to group elements together. So for example, I've shown you this like this. So I can also decide to do group them together. I can group one or more classes together. Do you understand? So if I want to group one or more classes together, let me comment this out. So we are commenting the style on the first paragraph out. Let's save it. And see, it goes back to the default color. So come back here. I will say, let's add the class name. So let's say class paragraph. Let's save that because we've not added any style. It still retains the default style. So let's come back here. So let's now let me now add. I want that same paragraph to have a color of yellow. So let's remove the container for now. So we want the two paragraphs there to have a color of yellow. Okay, so let's do. So what we'll do is the first dot paragraph, which is we are selecting it by the class name. Paragraph, comma. So the comma is saying that we have two different classes there. So we have two different elements. The first class is for the first paragraph tag. The second one is for the second paragraph. So now let's save it. You can see both are now yellow. So you can decide to now select the individual paragraph and still add more style to them. So let's do that. So let me make this font size. Let me increase the font size of this. So say something like 40 pixel. Can you see? So the first paragraph is kind of bigger than the second one. So this is combinator. This is CSS combinator. So let's look at more of the other combinators we have. So the first one we look at is the descendant selector. So there's something called DOM in HTML. So the DOM is document object model. It's the HTML structure of any file. So this is like the DOM. So we can see we have a body, we have the div, we have the h1 tag, we have another div, we have a p tag, we have a p tag. So the DOM has a parent, child, and sibling relationship. So what do I mean by parent-child sibling relationship? The parent of the paragraph, of this first paragraph, is the container div. So the parent of the second paragraph, which has a class of text, is also the container div. Do you understand? So paragraph, the first p with the class paragraph, is a sibling to the second p with the class text. So these two p tags are siblings. They're like brothers. Do you understand? So they are over the container wrapping them is their parent. So that's what we mean by the parent-child relationship and sibling relationship. So this is what the DOM structure is all about. So elements that are placed within a particular element are like parents. They are like parent-child. They have a parent-child relationship. Elements that are placed beside each other have a sibling relationship. So let's look at that selector. So that's what we describe as descendant, in the sense that P is a descendant of container tag. Text paragraph P with the class paragraph is a descendant of div with a class of container. P with the class of text is a descendant of what? Div with a class of container. And the div with a class of container is a descendant of this div. This particular div here without that doesn't have any class attached to it. Do you understand? So this class, this div with the class of container is a sibling to the H1. This particular H1 here. That means this particular class is a sibling to the H1 tag. That means they are brothers or they are sisters, brothers and sisters. They are siblings. Do you understand? So this particular div that's a parent to the H1 and the class container div is a child of the body tag. So the body tag is like the overall parent of every element within here. Do you understand? So that's the DOM structure. That's like the parent to child relationship we are talking about. So, and this also can be applied in CSS. We can use these DOM structure ways to as a way to select elements in CSS if we want to style them. So I think one of the ones we looked at earlier was this. That's what we did here. You can see here. Can you see here? So here, the container class will style all the p tag within it. All the p tag that it has as children, to style them and make them color red. Can you see? So if I decide to place another p tag outside the div container, let me place another p tag here. Let me call it let's say hello world. Let's use something more descriptive. CSS is beautiful. Can you see? So now let me add a class to it. Let me use something like outside. So just make it more descriptive, meaning outside the container. So let's save this file. Can you see? Can you see that the p tag with the class of outside does not inherit the color red? Why? Because it is not a child to this div with the class container. So if I decide to bring this now, this p tag, into the container, let me move it into the container, Let me save the file. Can you see? It becomes red. Why? Because now it is a child. Because this selector is saying that in the container, select all your p child, all the p child you have, all the p element you have as a child, give them a color of red. So this is like a descendant selector. Can you see? This is a descendant selector. So let me remove that p tag. Let me remove it outside the container now. Can you see? So it goes back to its default color. So another thing we'll look at now. We'll look at another thing with the child selector. So let's look at the child selector. So let's take another example. Here now, look at the DOM structure. So the div here, this is the div. So let's look at the child of the div. So the H1 is one of the child of the div. The P is also a child. The P with an ID of text. The P with a class of good is a child. The span also is a child. But the H2 is not a direct child. Do you understand? So how the child selector works that it works directly on the child of any element. So now let's go here. Let's go to our style child. So we have an angle bracket, right angle bracket. They want to select our what? We want to select the H1. So we'll give it a color of what? Color blue. So let's save that. Can you see? So let's go back to our HTML file. Let's look at what now. This is a direct child. That's why the color is blue. So the H2 we have here now, let's change it to H1. And let's see if it will how it will inherit that color blue. You can see it still remains the same. It's still black. I love CSS. Can you see? Why? The reason is that this selector that we use, the right angle bracket, is a child selector. But when we make child selector, it's a direct child selector. Do you understand? So based on the parent-child relationship of our DOM that we've explained earlier, it selects the child that are directly adjacent to their parent. So the h1 tag is directly adjacent to the parent. This h1 star, I love CSS, is not directly adjacent to the div. Why? Because it is within the span. So it is the span which is the parent of this h1 that is a direct child to this div here. Do you understand? So the only way we can select the h1 we have within here is by having another selector that says span, then giving it the right angle bracket h1. Then let's give it the color of what? Red. So let's save that. Can you see? So can you see it's now red? Why? Because this h1 is a direct child of the span tag, whereas it is not a direct child of this div. So whatever style we applied to this div by using the child selector, it will not be applied to this particular h1. Why? Because it's not a direct child of that div. So let's look at another example. Let's look at another selector. So another selector we'll be talking about now is general sibling selector. General sibling selector. So the way the general sibling selector works is that it is used to select siblings, elements that are adjacent to each other, even though they aren't direct adjacent. Like, we looked at the h1 and the div. The h1 is a direct adjacent to the div, which that is its parent. Here, this h1 is directly adjacent to this div. Do you understand? So what the general sibling selector does is that even though they are siblings, they are not directly adjacent to each other, we can still target them. So how do we do that? So one way we can do that is let me change this back to h2. So I'm going to remove this style that I added to this span. So let me come back here. So let me add another span within this span. So within this span, let me add another p tag, or let's just copy this second p we have here. Let's just cut it. Let's place it within the second span. Can you see? Now, based on our DOM structure here, this span, the first span, is the parent. The overall parent is the parent to the h2, is the parent to the second span, is like the grandparent to the p tag within the span, the second span. Do you understand? So now let's save the file. So the h2 is a sibling. It's a direct sibling to the span, and it's also a sibling to the p tag within this span, but it's not a direct sibling. So they are not directly adjacent to each other. They are siblings, but they are not directly adjacent to each other. It's only the span that is a direct adjacent to this h2. So now how do I style this p tag? So what I'll do is, this is the overall parent, so they are directly adjacent to each other now. The general sibling selector is represented with this. So how do you get this time? By clicking on the shift and the button beside one. There's a button beside one, just before one. So you click on shift and click that button. It gives you that sign. And write P. So let's give it the color of red. Can you see? So I'm saying that the P that is a direct sibling to the H2 should have the color red. So that's why the P tag is red. This other P tag is not a sibling to the H2. So the only way I can select this other sibling, which is I enjoy learning at Instinct Org, is by one, there are several ways which we've looked at. Is by using direct descendant selector. We can decide to use descendant selector. We can decide to use the child selector, we can decide to use the general sibling selector, which we just looked at now. So let's try the three of them. So I'm going to start with the general sibling selector. So to use the general sibling selector, all you just do is H1, this sign, then P. So we'll give it the color of yellow. Can you see? I enjoy learning at Instinctor. That's one way. Through the general sibling selector. So let's use another way. Let's use the child selector way. So let's go back to our DOM, to our HTML file. You can see that the P with the class ID is a direct descendant of this div here. So all you just do is come here, do your div, child selector, then P. Then we'll give you the color of yellow again. Okay, let me do another color so we can be sure that's you. It's actually working. Can you see? Green. I enjoy learning at Instinctor. So that's one way. And you can also decide to use the ID on it to select it. So let's use this ID. So just do. So what's the ID here? We have text. Using the pound sign. Text. So you can decide to use one of the colors here. Let's see. Orange. So those are the selectors we have.